Hello and welcome to the weekly Yes, a podcast where two best friends talk about their joint mission to say yes to life. I am your host, Jara Skagfjord, and co-host is my bestie, the amazing Kristin Guerin. On today's episode, Kristin and I talk about big changes and bold moves. We talk about how giving 70% during a performance is more than enough, and how important it is to meet yourself where you're at instead of striving for perfection. For today's fast fact, I wanted to let you know that at one point in the episode, I started talking about the time I played Sally Bowles. And for those of you who don't know, Sally Bowles is one of the lead characters in a famous musical and movie called Cabaret. Some of you might remember Liza Minnelli with a very short haircut and a bowler hat, singing and dancing on a chair. That is Liza Minnelli playing Sally Bowles. I also wanted to let you know, in case you're a first-time listener, or remind you if you have listened to our podcast before, that Kristin and I are both studying ancient wisdom that is called Kabbalah or Kabbalah. So when you hear Kristin say Kabbalistic, she's not saying capitalistic, she's saying Kabbalistic as in Kabbalah. And with that, I will drop you straight into our conversation. Enjoy. Yeah, the veil will continue to be thin until January 6th, until 12th night, essentially.
Thank you for saying that. I was already sad. I knew this, but I forgot because this week is so sacred between Christmas and New Year's. I love this week so much. And I was so sad today that I feel like I didn't really get a chance to fully enjoy it. And I was like, gosh, I wish I had just one more week of it. I do.
Yeah, you still do.
That's
and
great.
Even I don't know how it is here, but in Iceland on the 6th of January, which is called 12th night, but it's actually called 13. Which means the 13th night in Icelandic. There are bonfires and fireworks and stuff. Like it's a celebratory
So it is
thing.
Latin America does that. The United States does not.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's Three Kings Day. I don't know why we don't do that, but yeah,
That's
we could
interesting.
have a bonfire.
Anyway, what did you say
Hello.
yes to this week?
Do you want to start? What did you say yes to this week?
I was forced to say yes
You
to
were
rest.
forced.
I really was. I've been bedridden for over a week. I'm on day 10 or 11 now of being sick. I haven't been this sick in years. And it was such an interesting difference because I got COVID in summer of 2021. And at the time, I was working part-time and I needed the hours so badly that I didn't take any time off. So I was still working. I was in bed and I was on my computer. I couldn't even sit up. I was literally lying down doing my hours. Also because I didn't test positive for the first couple of days, even though I was crazy sick. So I didn't feel like I had a legit excuse, but mostly I just needed the hours. So I was able to find so many silver linings and so much gratitude for the fact that I was sick at this point in time, because now I have a full-time job and I was able to call out without losing any income. And my system was just whew, I can actually rest. If I would have gotten sick earlier, it would have not been good for my teammates at work because we were in the middle of busy season. If I had gotten sick a week later, I wouldn't have been able to show up on set next weekend. So there were I was just so filled with gratitude this whole time, even though being sick always sucks. But I was like, wow, if it needed to happen, this was perfect timing. I was able to say yes to staying positive and saying yes to gratitude in a really shitty and sucky situation. It was actually a very magical time, even though being sick sucks. So that was my week, or rather the past 2 weeks of my life.
Interesting. I think it was last time we did this podcast, so a week and a half ago, that you said something along the lines of wanting to be more grateful for all of the small miracles in your life.
Really? I said that?
You either did or I dreamt it, Yada. It's one or the other.
Either way, I said it regardless of the dimension.
I'm pretty sure you did. I think it was the last episode, which, if that is what you said, you were given that exact opportunity, immediately. Also of interest, you have done, and we've talked about this so many times, your financial wellness now and how much you've transformed. And not just for yourself, for your whole family and your ancestors, and like what a huge shift that's been for you. And what a beautiful blessing this is that you were able to be so safe and protected financially. What an amazing full circle thing at the end of the year to be able to see, yeah, I really did. I transformed that in a huge way. COVID is a transformative virus. It just is. It's like remember the Black Plague back in the day? Remember those days?
Those good old
Remember
days.
those good old days? Yeah, and it transformed the world, literally. It transformed. I remember I had it March 2020 right at the beginning, and it changed my life. I am a different person because I had that illness at that time. End of March Kristen or early April Kristen was a very different person than middle of March Kristen. And I just don't think it's a coincidence that it happened right before you do some three major career things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
My yes for the last week and a half, this is my big yes, was I decided to, and this is going to take a bit of time for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is red tape and immigration, but I decided to move very far away. Well, I decided to move to a new country to start a new life altogether. I had a vision. So this all happened on Tuesday. So we've wrapped up the podcast by 11 a.m. and by about 2 p.m. I'd taken the first steps. I made that decision right there at 11:15 a.m. And by 2 p.m. I'd filed the initial application. And I've had a couple meetings with the immigration things and everything I have to do and started the process. So that's a big yes.
That's a huge yes. Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to take a bit of time, but I had this vision a couple days later of there's this thing in The Artist's Way on the last chapter. They talk about escape velocity or exit velocity, which is when you're about to leave your job, your boss gives you a huge promotion. When you're about to break up with a person, he invites you on a trip to Brazil. Why am I saying Brazil?
I don't know. Someone out there is in that
Someone needed to
exact
think of that.
conundrum.
I couldn't think of another country. But yeah, so that's you're about to make a huge change in your life. And then the universe says, are you sure?
It's the test.
Yeah.
It's the big test. They put it in movies as well.
That's true. Yeah, we see that. So I had this vision of, I had that happen to me this week. It happened several times. And one of the things, or maybe the biggest one, is there's this apartment that I lived in Miami that I loved so much. And I wanted to buy desperately. And I tried like a year and a half, 2 years ago to get the realtor, to get the owner to sell it to me. I was like, please, I just want to live in this. No one's living in it. It's empty. I desperately wanted to live in it. And obviously that was immoral. She couldn't coerce the seller to sell the apartment and she didn't want to sell it. It's just, I wanted it so badly though. Anyway, a couple months ago, I saw that it's on the market, but then sold. It was I don't know what the word is, but it was
Under contract? No.
under contract. Yes. So somebody bought it and I was heartbroken, honestly. Just a couple months ago, I was like, oh, I'm so sad. Like I still was hoping I really wanted to live there. I had this whole vision of my life running my organization, which is in Miami, working at the theaters there. And I was like, I have a beautiful life. It's an amazing apartment, gorgeous views, owning this place. This was the dream, right? And then about a week ago, the apartment was listed again and it's affordable. It's in my price range. And I was just like, I could freaking do this. Then I sat with it for no more than 5 minutes. But the way I saw it was I could make a little change in my life, staying here in this apartment that I'm in right now in Jersey City, living the same life, working remotely to Miami, maybe auditioning every so often, maybe booking some stuff, doing it, making tiny changes, right? Like little change. Or I could make medium-sized change, which would be moving to Miami, buying that apartment, pretty big change, but it's still medium. Starting to like network and work at the theaters there and really go all in at Buddy's system, make it what I want it to be and grow it and expand it. There's a lot of potential, right? Medium change. That would also be beautiful. Both of those options are beautiful. Or I could make big change, which is what it seems like I'm doing. Yeah. So that's been the last couple weeks or so. The big changes, leaving the stable job that I have, but that I'm done with, that it's just time for something new, time for growth and moving halfway around the world. So we're going with the big one and we're going to take our time to make sure that we do it right. Happy 2024.
Happy 2024, I'll say. Wow, I love that imagery of the Goldilocks three bears. Like the small change, medium change, big change. When you were speaking, I got, like, a little emotional, which is
Mm,
interesting. I was like, "Oh, wow," like, and not in a sad way, just, like, in a very inspired way. Yeah, it was very inspiring, and the imagery was just so beautiful, and it's just so badass and so
mm,
brave. So
thank you.
brave what you're doing. I have moved countries,
Yeah.
and it is a huge deal. It's a huge deal. When I did it, I was just in my early 20s, so I was like, "Yeah, fine, I'll go." You know what I mean? Like, it's different, like, you're not thinking about all of the things, but I would argue it's probably braver to do it this late in life when you know more about the world and you're more comfortable and you know more who you are and, like, and what you like and what you don't like all of these things, and so I'm with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Even though I'm not
Thank
going
you.
with you, I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's do this." That's how I feel. So I'm super excited about what blossoms from this. I think I told you yesterday, I sent an audio to you, and I was just like, "I am so excited for 2024 in the Kristen Chronicles. What is gonna happen?" I'm like at the edge of my seat. Remember when we were kids and the Harry Potter books would come out, and then you, "Oh my god, I have to wait for the next one." Like, you would finish it. You would get it for Christmas. I would finish it by New Year's and be like, "How am I supposed to wait another year until the next one comes?"
Yeah.
That's how I feel right now.
I just want to highlight something you just said because we've talked about it before of how much easier it is to make big changes when you're young and dumb.
Oh, ignorance is bliss.
It is. It
Yeah.
really is. And it also just makes me think of beginner's luck, the bravery or the chutzpah and the ignorance to just jump into the thing, right? There's just not as much noise. You're
Yeah.
not stopping yourself. You're just doing it because you just don't know any better. I had fallen in love with someone who I was very far away, and that wasn't an in my head, it wasn't an option. And I was like, this can't be because we live so far away from each other. And you had said, excuse me, my husband and I did the exact same thing, the same exact distance apart.
Yep.
But the difference was you did it in your 20s.
Yeah.
And it was just, while it was, I'm sure, scary and a very brave thing to do, it was just as illogical in both situations. But because you're in the second grade versus the 12th grade,
Yeah.
it's like you don't have as much schooling to be like, this is illogical.
No, it's like you say all the time with buddy system, like, if you had known
Yeah.
how
Yep.
difficult it was gonna be, you never would have started it. If I had
Stand
known
by.
all of the challenges that we had to go through, not just in terms of bureaucracy and, like, paperwork and all these things, all the hoops we
Yeah.
had to jump through for visa purposes and all of that practical stuff, but also just what it means to merge two lives together that are not from the same culture and don't speak the same language. Because in Iceland, when people leave to live in other countries for a while, like they go to study something or maybe even to work somewhere for a while, the expectation is that you come back
Mhm.
for everybody. So people kept asking me for at least 5, if not 6 years after I moved to the US not if. So when are you coming back?
Wow.
Yeah. I've said a couple of times to some people that, that ask me about this stuff is that the initial decision to move here was actually not that difficult. What's difficult is
Mhm.
choosing every year, every day, every month to stay.
Yeah.
That's the difficult decision because also the period of time that I'm choosing to live in the States when Trump was elected, people were afraid. They were afraid for my life because of him and then because of all kinds of other issues that are here. I know that my mom has had so much anxiety ever since I moved here because I, knock on wood, didn't have any health insurance because I couldn't afford it and I didn't have a job
Right.
that provided it. Like health insurance, gun violence, all of those things. So it's the decision to stay that was difficult because I don't know if every country is like this, but I think Iceland is, especially probably because we're an island and the population is it's really small, so we need every person. It's like
Yeah.
we all hands on deck to
Yeah.
make society work. So the tug, like the roots are really strong in Iceland and like the energy of the land and the country. Yeah, it was only like up until a couple of years ago where I stopped doubting my decision.
Mhm.
There
Yeah.
was always like this tiny, and Yadin and I talk about it all the time. Like I ask Yadin all the time because he also had to leave his home country.
Yeah.
Um, like we talk about it all the time. Like, do you sometimes think that you made the wrong choice? And
Yeah.
I've had those moments where I'm like, sometimes I do, to be quite honest. Like I do think about it. Like what would have happened if I had just at that point decided to move back at year 2 or at year 5 or at year all those moments it was a real possibility to just move back and just say, "No, absolutely not." Just throw my hands in the air and be like, "I can't deal with this anymore," whether it was the country or we were going
Mhm.
through stuff in our relationship or whatever, or just our own personal thing that's going on, and you think in your head, "Oh, if I just go back home to the safety and to what I know and to things are gonna be so much easier." So it's a continuous choice. And it can be applied to a marriage as well.
Yeah.
Like, you choose someone and you commit to them, and then you have to continually choose them.
It reminds me of the Kabbalistic principle, which is the right decision. And you're trying to figure out what's the right decision to make, right? You're at the fork in the road. And the Kabbalists say the right decision is whichever choice you make with certainty. Doesn't matter. Either choice is fine, but you got to commit. And that is the right choice. Either choice, the same exact choice made without certainty, made looking over your shoulder. It reminds me of the Hadestown story
Yeah.
that it's based on.
Orpheus and Eurydice.
That same exact choice, looking over your shoulder and being like, I don't know, like maybe I should have gone the other way. That's the wrong choice. But it's wrong or right depending on your certainty in it and your conviction.
Yeah.
And your dedication to it. Interesting.
Big things. Big things happening in 2024. Do you know what you wanna say yes to in the upcoming week?
Yes. Boy, action, collapsing timeline, and taking action. I said to a friend, I had a long chat with a friend today about energetic hygiene and energetic protection and stuff. And he said, and I was talking to him about smudging. First time anyone's ever talked about smudging. And he was talking, I was like, but you don't have to do it for long. He's buying a bunch of secondhand furniture right now. And I said, you don't have to do it for long. You can just 30 seconds under the table. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, right? Because I know him and I know if I didn't tell him the amount of time, he would be there for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? On one table. I got to restrict him. I know this man's tendencies. If 30 seconds is good, then boy, what would 90 seconds get me? Or what would 120 seconds? You know what I mean? This is the way that this man thinks. And I said to him, it's actually not really about how much time it takes. It's actually about, on a spiritual level, it's just intention and action.
Mhm.
So the fact that your intention is to clear this table of any residual energy from its last home, and then your action was to smudge it. Your action also could have been to just clean it, or your action could have been to sit it in the sun for an hour. Like you have many options here to throw some water on it, whatever you wanted to do.
Throw holy water onto the table.
Put it in the garden. But
Yeah.
that too. All of these things would work. It's actually just taking some sort of action that transmutes the energy, transmutes the intention into action, right? Into manifested change. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things I want to do with this special time frame in the next 6 or 7 days. It's the 31st today. So however many days that is till the 6th. That's 7 then? 7 days? Do we count the days on both sides? Do you?
I actually know exactly what you mean. It's like when you say 2 days, do you mean today and yesterday? Or is
Thank
it
you.
yesterday and the day before?
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
I
one
don't
knows.
know. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
In this time frame, however long those days are, there's a lot I want to get done. A lot of, and not just get done as in check them off my to-do list, but use this time and energy, this sacred time and energy to infuse that into the things I'm doing. Maybe it just looks like taking small actions with the intention and just taking any action will do. Just get started. I guess that's my intention for the upcoming week.
I like that. Saying yes to action.
And not the full action either, right? I
Yeah.
don't even just thinking of this huge move I'm making and how many, like, it's going to be a lot. Again, I could do it in a week. I could do all my paperwork. I don't have to. I don't have to do the whole thing immediately. Just taking some action. Again, this just reminds me of that other, just, I don't know, spiritual principle of like, when you make a move, just any move will do. You know what I mean? And then things move around you. So I don't have to actually know where we're going necessarily. I just have to move in some direction.
Yep.
The same person I was talking to today says he still lives in New York City. And he was like, I would get out of the subway, my Google Maps. I love this analogy. And he'd say, and you know how the Google Maps has like that little blue dot, but you can't always tell which way it's facing or which way you're supposed to go, right or left or north, whatever. And he was like, I could just stand there and stare at it and try to figure it out from where this exact spot I'm standing in. Or so much easier, just take a few steps in either direction and Google Maps will catch up. Or you'll see a sign and you're like, oh, I'm going that way. Isn't that brilliant? That's exactly what happens on a spiritual level. Just take any steps in any direction, take any action, and the universe will provide the next steps. It'll become clear.
Yeah.
where you go next and what's happening around you.
That actually reminds me when Yadin and I decided to break up, like, we decided to take a break. Like, we were married, but we had just been going through a rough time, and we just couldn't figure out how to fix it, and, like, we were both at a loss. So the only thing to do so we could have just continued, like, what we were doing and just, like, kept being together and, like, keep trying to figure it out or whatever, but instead, we decided to break up, and we
Mhm.
broke up for a couple of months. And it couldn't have become more clear during that time what the problem was and that we actually didn't wanna break up. I'll never forget that. This is probably, like, a topic for a whole other podcast episode, but the fact that we made that decision and committed to that decision, like you said, things started moving around both inside of us and around us, and things just became so much more clear, and they were so muddled before because the the people that had gotten us into the situation we were in were not the same people that were gonna get us out of it, if that makes sense. So we needed to commit
Right.
to something, committing to being apart. We changed as people, even though it was just a couple of months, but it was still a very powerful time. And then those people decided to come back together and fix things, and they did. Boy, did they, in a major way. Yeah, so I believe firmly in that principle to just take any action and see what happens. It was a similar thing when we decided to move down to Atlanta.
Mm.
Actually, very similar to what you were saying earlier about the little change, the medium change, and the big change. Like, the medium change for us was to move apartments. We were gonna move, maybe we'll move to a different neighborhood, maybe we'll try something else, and then we were like, "Not a big enough change." It was just like a moment that we had. We were, like, about to go to sleep. Dean sits up and he goes, "Do you think we're making a big enough change by just, like, moving
Mm.
apartments?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let's sleep on it." We went to sleep. We woke up, and I sat up and I go, "What about Atlanta?" And Yadin goes, "Huh." And then we just started looking for apartments, and then we just went there, sight unseen. I think that my yes for the week, I'm starting to get scared because I haven't been my full healthy self for 2 weeks. I'm feeling weak, like I'm feeling, like, out of shape. I still have congestion in my nose, like, my voice isn't fully back, like, I have a really difficult song that I need to sing in a cabaret in a couple of weeks, and I'm going on set next weekend. So I'm starting to experience, like, a little bit of fear. And I remember in last episode, I mentioned that whole audition process and wanting to be more authentic. So what popped up in my head right before this episode is I remember when I was doing Sally Bowles and I got bronchitis. Like I've mentioned before, in Iceland, we don't have understudies. So I had to go on. And this was, like, such a huge learning moment for me as a performer because the thing that has sometimes encouraged me, but most of the time discouraged me from doing things is this perfectionism of showing
Mhm.
up and being absolutely perfect, being absolutely, like, pitch perfect. Like, you're hitting your marks every time. Like, you're like all of those things, like being as perfect as you possibly can be. And I couldn't. I had
Mm.
bronchitis. Like, I cannot possibly
Yeah.
physically, realistically, give them the same exact Sally Bowles that I've been able to give previous audiences because I am ill. I'm just ill
Yeah.
and my voice isn't what it is, and, like, I don't have the muscle support and all these things, and there was a time where I would have been so anxious and, like, I probably would have been crying backstage because I would have been, like, so afraid that it's not gonna be a perfect performance, like, I just don't like the way that I sound, like, all of these things. But I remember I made it into a challenge for myself, like, spiritually to, okay, like, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity
Mm.
for me to practice literally being imperfect or practicing self-care. And I had this mantra before I went on stage. I was just like, "You know what? This is just who I am today,
Mm.
and this is the Sally Bowles that they're gonna get.
Yeah.
They are getting Sally Bowles with bronchitis. There is nothing I can do about it. And I just have to accept that. And I have to just be exactly this
Yeah.
and do what I'm doing." And I was listening to a podcast right before I came onto this podcast, and she said something like, "I can only be who I am. That's it. I can only be who I am." So I'm like, so I am Yara with bronchitis. That means that my Sally Bowles today will be Sally Bowles with bronchitis. So that is the mindset that I really need to go into this week. Like, you just show up exactly as you are in the place that you're in And that will be the thing that happens on the day. And that will be the exact thing that needs to happen for the project that you're in, because that is the day when you show up in this exact situation and circumstance and health and all those things and attitude and mood. So I really want to say, just saying yes to meeting myself where I'm at. And if I'm not 100% better when I'm singing a very difficult song that's very near and dear to my heart, so then it won't be 100%. And that's it.
Mhm.
I literally just said last week that I want to, in 2024 and like moving forward, I want to be more authentic and I want to show up more authentically. And that includes when I am not 100%. And trust that's exactly what needs to happen.
This is a theme that I feel like we've talked about a few times. This is the first time we've talked about it in regard to performance, because performance, with
Mhm.
quotes around it, there's such a connotation to that word about being this is the best it's supposed to be, right? The rehearsals, you can be less than, you can mark. I just think of dance rehearsals and like, I'm just going to mark this one. But I'll do it full out for the performance. It's okay.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's the same principle as trusting the universe to speak through me. Okay, so I'm showing up less than 100%, and that's a gift to whomever's watching, right? So this version of this performance is exactly what these people needed to receive. I just think of times in my career where it's been, and not necessarily because I've been sick or something, but 8 shows a week, I'm just done. I'm fried. And I'm like, they're going to get a solid 70% from me. Like I've
Yeah.
said that on time. Like, they're going to get a hard 70, and trusting that 70% of my, like I could be 100% and bring 100% of my energy, but like, whoa, that's a lot to give. It's, oh, that 70 actually feels great right now. And because I'm coming at it maybe a little bit differently or a little bit less or whatever, however you might want to term that, of like it also opens up opportunities for the play to change a little bit, for the space between the audience and the actor to change. Like I just think of, there's one show in particular I did where I knew I was hitting 70%. I'm like, I'm not here today. Like emotionally, I'm hitting 70%. And oh my gosh, it was, my experience of the audience was so much more intense. And I was like, oh, we have such a different, like something's going on here between us, because I'm not pushing and forcing everything to be perfect and micromanaging, right? Instead, I'm being a little bit more vulnerable, right? Instead of micromanaging and making everything perfect, I'm showing up a little bit more vulnerable. You're maybe able to see me a little bit more, even. You're able to connect a little bit more, and trusting that those people in that audience are getting out of it exactly what they're supposed to get out of it,
Mm-hmm.
not what I thought they were supposed to get out of it.
And I'm just thinking, because you said 70%, it's very possible that the audience is meeting you with 30%, but also might be coming from somewhere else. Like it might be coming from the divine, it might be coming from the story. And the story is going to get told. It's not just up to me to explain, like it's not up to me to make sure that every single audience member understands and gets what's happening.
Yeah.
I used to get that note in Shakespeare. He was like, you don't have to explain Shakespeare to us. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, that's how it's coming across. It's you are trying to make sure that the audience understands Shakespeare. Like you don't have to do that. Just sit in Shakespeare. All right. Are we saying Happy New Year?
Yes, but I can't think of a single song, but I know there is.
Is there a Happy New? It's just Auld Lang Syne.
Old Lang
right?
Syne.
That's fine. We did say Happy New Year last episode.
Did we?
Technically, yeah, we did. Happy New Year again, everybody. It's been a pleasure, and we will see you next week.
Okay, bye.
That concludes this week's episode of The Weekly Yes. You will find us on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube, and you can follow us on Instagram as well at The Weekly Yes. We encourage you to say yes to change and perhaps experiment with how you can transform a small change into a medium or even a big change. You can also share with us what you're saying yes to in 2024 by emailing us at theweeklyyes@gmail.com, and you might be featured in an upcoming episode. Keep saying yes, and we'll see you next week.